Imprinting is a very rapid learning that happens at particular stages of one's development. Imprinting in the nervous system results in behavioral patterns and preferences that the learner may not be aware of. Filial imprinting is where a young animal rapidly narrows its social preferences to an object, typically a parent. This has been used by mankind for centuries in domesticating animals. Austrian naturalist Konrad Lorenz, pictured here with his ducks, became the first to establish the science behind the imprinting process. Lorenz found that when young birds came out of their eggs, they would become socially bonded to the first moving object they encountered. In most cases in the wild, that would be their mother. But Lorenz replaced himself as the object of their affection. And it wasn't just him that the young birds would attach themselves to as a mother substitute. They would just as easily attach to inanimate objects if they were presented at the right time. Once that learning is fixed or programmed, it is not likely to be forgotten or unlearned. In the photo, you'll see that the curious case of a leopard in India who bonded to a cow. This leopard would visit and snuggle with the cow at night. No one really knows why or how this happened, but the theory I find most convincing is that somehow the leopard imprinted this cow or all cows as caregivers. It's reasonable to think that imprinting is an important learning process in human beings. After all, these bodies of ours are mammals. But it's unclear exactly how this process works in human babies, although there are plenty of theories. Human babies can't go out to forage for food like the young of other species. Rapid imprinting is likely essential to our survival. It is commonly understood that a strong bond with caregivers is critical in a human's early life. There are studies that show fetuses have a preference for faces. This was studied using light displays to get a fetus's attention. Attachment theory has gained prominence in the past century. In attachment theory, infants become socially bonded to adults who remain as consistent caregivers during the 6 months to 2 years of age. During the latter part of this period, children begin to use attachment figures, familiar people, as a secure base to explore from and return to. These early relationships lead to internal working models which will guide the individual's feelings, thoughts, and expectations in later relationships in life. Besides early relationships, there are other factors likely at work when it comes to our circuit 1. In the past few decades, epigenetic studies indicate there is a strong possibility, and some would say likelihood, that the environment one's mother lives in, as well as the experiences the parents are going through during conception and a fetus's development in the womb, cause rapid modifications in the fetus's DNA. The idea is something like, if one's parents are highly stressed, let's say fighting for survival in a barren landscape, the child will be born better prepared for a tougher environment. The child would somewhat be predisposed to not trust the world around them. They'd be predisposed for the not safe side of the circuit 1 spectrum. Adults heavily imprinted towards world is not safe often experience chronic anxiety. They are prone to worries about survival and can be quite sensitive to criticism. Dr. Gabor Mate, a Hungarian-Canadian physician, has done a lot of work on the subject of addiction in adults. He has concluded that there is a connection between being born and raised in not safe environments and growing up to suffer from psychological illness resulting in addictive behaviors. Mate believes that addiction is an attempt to solve a problem. One could say that addicts are attempting to reset their circuit 1 imprints, attempting to find the warm, loving, safe world they've never experienced. Writer Kirkland Newman Smulders summarizes Mate's work as saying, "Our brains have opiate receptors, and endogenous opiates help us cope with pain. Just a thought can trigger the release of our internal painkillers," which is why Dr. Mate is not interested in the particular substance or behavior that the person is addicted to. End quote. Mate's next book is titled The Myth of Normal: Illness and Health in an Insane Culture. Just the title of the work alone speaks to a key theme in his work, which is that a primary factor behind the depression and anxiety epidemic many countries are facing is the fact that people are being raised in psychologically and or physically unsafe environments. This results in giant multinational medical companies profiting greatly off of treating the symptoms of unsafe circuit 1 imprints without healing the imprints themselves. Talk therapy, antidepressant medications, and AA can of course be incredibly useful and powerful in improving people's quality of life, but again, these address symptoms, not necessarily root causes. Christina Grof spent decades working on the subject of the intersection between addiction and spirituality. She said that alcoholics are an exaggerated form of all of us. Every human being struggles with attachment. Christina herself struggled with alcoholism and worked to bridge the gap between addiction studies and the concept of attachment in Eastern religions such as Buddhism and some forms of Hinduism. The root of all suffering is attachment, said the Buddha. The concept of attachment in Eastern tradition is widely misunderstood, I think. Often it's taken to mean that people should not want, desire, or enjoy anything in life, that somehow a true spiritual adherent should be totally neutral to the world around them. This is not accurate in my opinion. Instead, I think the true meaning behind this teaching can be found by understanding circuit 1 imprinting, and by understanding that addictive compulsive behavior arises when someone's default imprint is set to unsafe or away. One's inner craving for safety and comfort leads to compulsive behavior, which in turn leads to disastrous consequences for oneself and society as a whole. Our circuit 1 imprint can't be fixed through desperate clinging to people, objects, and situations in our lives. The Buddha knew it thousands of years ago, and it's more true today than ever. In part 4 of this talk, we'll talk about how circuit 1 imprints can be addressed in a productive fashion.